Glad to be here. Thanks, Paulette. Thank you all. Thanks for coming. As Paulette mentioned, and as this group is all about, future audiences, Monterey Bay Aquarium has been looking at future audiences for a long time. We are an institution created in 1984, basically created by baby boomers for a baby boomer generation. And that's a demographic that's aging out. And if we hope to maintain our success and continue to be a relevant cultural organization and environmental organization in the future, we need to connect with the new audiences that are out there, connecting with those audiences in the ways that they can be reached in order to get the first step, which is to get them to come in the doors. And then we hope that's the start of a long-term relationship of inspiration, of action on behalf of the oceans. We began a number of years ago looking at demographics of audiences and hired a Hispanic audience expert, for lack of a better word, to reach out to the changing population of California. And that has been an extraordinarily successful effort of ours in terms of being relevant, being part of the cultural fabric and family life for California's growing Hispanic population. As one example of what we do. We have been using social media increasingly over the last 3 or 4 years because that is one of the vehicles people are using now to connect, share information, share their excitement, share their enthusiasm. And we believe that's a driver that ultimately gets people in the door, talking about us, and sharing that enthusiasm with others. It was something I was doing kind of casually, and it has become much more institutionalized. And Jeff Drake, who is my colleague at the aquarium with our web team, his title is officially Senior Web Writer, but in effect he is our social media manager across all of the platforms. And that's a reflection of the degree to which social media and social media communications and vehicles for social media communications have grown over the, 3 years or so that Jeff has been with the aquarium. This is what he is immersed in on a day-to-day basis. He can certainly talk to you and will talk about the degree to which it can be all-consuming and ways to manage it so that it is not all-consuming or is less consuming but still effective. And Twitter and through other platforms, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and also how to really track what we're doing to make sure that it's having an impact for the amount of time we spend. So, Jeff.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, it's been quite a tumultuous 3 years. It's great to be up here with Ken because it's kind of a journey we've shared. We've experienced the majority of our growth in the last 3 years across all these platforms. And, social media, the only constant in social media is change. I mean, we're evaluating new vehicles all the time. We're dropping vehicles as they become outdated and outmoded. And boy, for someone like me, it's been a great experience to you really have to be light on your feet and be willing to change and adapt all the time. But what I'll do is I'll run through a few slides, and then hopefully if you can see it, I have a Wi-Fi connection here, and I'll just go ahead and bring up our Twitter presence, and I'll do some live tweeting right here. And so we can see how the mechanics of it actually work. It's interesting for Paulette to say that it's free. They're kind of free because the time investment is enormous. And part of what I'll talk about a little bit is how to compartmentalize some of your time because there is a giant sucking sound with social media, and you can spend your entire day doing social media no problem, as many of you probably know. And it is a thing that you get out of it what you put into it. So actually the more energy, particularly with Twitter, and I'll talk a little bit about that, the more energy you put into it, the faster you're going to grow and the more influential you'll be there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our Twitter presence. Hopefully you can see this. So question of the day, who cares what Lance Armstrong had for lunch? So this is March 12th, pretty recent. Just had an amazing barbecue sandwich at the Lighthouse Delicatessen in Hawaii. I highly recommend it. Well, who cares? And this is typical of what's on Twitter. Everybody wants to tell you what time they get up in the morning, how many eggs they scrambled, and who cares? Well, In the case of Lance Armstrong, 3,409,000 people care what he had for lunch and where he ate it. But Lance is not even a blip on the radar, because the coolest people on Twitter are Lady Gaga, number one. She has 23 million people following her every move and her every breath. Justin Bieber, at number two, has 20 million people that want to know in what order he puts on his clothes every day. Barack Obama, 14 million. He's number seven. Even the Dalai Lama tweets. So I'm not quite sure what he has to say. We can take a look later if we have time. And the Monterey Bay Aquarium, while we're quite proud of our Twitter presence, we are number 169,773 out of the many, many people that are now on Twitter. The average person tweets has 27 people following them. But we have 18,208 followers and counting. Hopefully that's up to 18,300 by the time the end of this presentation rolls around. So what is Twitter? I like to say Twitter is social media meets haiku. Limit 140 characters, including spaces. So that's at once very constraining and kind of liberating. You don't have to write a lot to get your message across, but you have to crystallize your thoughts, and you have to be very direct. You have to be pithy, you have to be informal, and you have to be funny. Most of those are things that people have never accused me of being. So it's a real learning process. It's also called microblogging, which, if you think about blogging as an informal journalism vehicle, this is microblogging. You broadcast to a lot of people, but it's in short form. And it is a message multiplier. It's one of the great things about Twitter. You can't quite see my little pyramid there, but at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, we have 18,000 followers. If the average is 27 followers for every person on Twitter, their followers number 486,000. If all their followers were to receive a tweet that we had put out, that would be 13,122,000 potential people for our reach. So you can see how an effective message can get out there and have a pretty broad impact. You can identify your influencers and the people that have the biggest reach. Those are the people that you want to pay attention to, send them bribes, give them a phone call, whatever the case, because if you get your Twitter handle, your Twitter name in one of their tweets, you're going to benefit tremendously. We started in April of 2009. We quickly got up to about 1,000 people, and that's been our growth. The funny thing about this graph is I keep doing presentations like this, and I'm not very good in Excel, and I have to continually go and update this graph. It's actually behind right now. You can see it tops out at about 14,000. We're actually at 18,000. So it's been a very linear growth rate for us on Twitter. We put in a lot of time, and there's a little blip there, which was a very specific Twitter promotion that we did to try and get new followers, but otherwise it's been almost exactly linear. There are 165 million users of Twitter globally, and of those, half are accessing it via mobile. So that's another thing about Twitter, is it's a great platform for mobile because it's so short. There's not a lot of scrolling involved. It's not a strain on the eyes. And we'll talk a little bit about how to access Twitter on mobile as well. But it's important to always keep the mobile user in mind, not only for Twitter, but everything these days.
Just to interject, we did a survey recently on aquarium visitors, and basically half of our visitors now are using a mobile device while they're in our building, which means they may be checking in on Facebook so that everybody knows they're at the aquarium now. They may be sharing a photo that they took with Instagram, which Facebook now owns. They're doing something with a mobile device while they're in our building. And foreshadowing a future talk, we, like a lot of organizations, are now thinking about, well, what can we do in the mobile space to add to the visit and not distract people from what they came to see, which is the animals and the experiences, at the touch pools. What are they going to do when they come to your museum? So you don't distract them from the artworks on the walls, or you don't distract them from a performance of dance, but get them talking in a way and sharing in a way that makes it easier for the next person who's one of their friends to come in the door and have the same experience.
And we're also seeing now huge growth in tablets as well. An aquarium that has very real implications, because you can imagine if people are now taking pictures with their tablets. So in front of the Open Sea exhibit, you have a line of 10 people holding up their tablets. That's going to obscure the view for a lot of people. So it's always a changing world. So is Twitter just a game of followers, or does it serve a purpose for your organization? In other words, why participate? Well, one is to get out your message, whether it's fundraising, whether it's to get people to attend your event. Everybody has a different driver for social media in their organization. But getting out your message, brand building, there's a lot of tricks that you can do to ensure that your brand is propagated across Twitter, that you maintain your identity, and that even when you get retweeted, in other words, when people start to echo what you're saying, that your brand is represented in those tweets so that you have that viral effect. Building relationships, I mean, we are continually asked, as the same questions every company across the country is asking right now: what is the value of social media? And why do I want to pay this employee here to spend all their time there? What's the elusive ROI, return on investment? There is ROI. It can be tangible and it can be quantified, but there's also a lot of intangible benefit. And a lot of the intangible benefit we're learning is customer service and building relationships. So I'm increasingly on Twitter and Facebook, I'm answering questions like, I'm disabled, how do I get a wheelchair at the aquarium? What time do you close? It's very simple things like that. Can I go out and come back in? Can I get my hand stamped? So it's very much turning into a customer service role, and that's a reputation enhancement. If you're known to be responsive to people through Twitter and through your other social media channels, if you're fast, if you're responsive, if you're friendly, if you have the right voice, it plays a very important role, and that may not be entirely quantifiable. Although our customer service, our call center folks certainly appreciate it when we're taking care of some of their work via social media. Demonstrate authority in your field. For the Monterey Bay Aquarium, our mission is to inspire conservation of the oceans. So Twitter is uniquely suited to conservation news. And so it's a means to demonstrate that we're on the forefront of that news, that we know what's happening in ocean conservation, and that we're advancing our mission. So it's a means to demonstrate authority in your field. You know, I come in every morning and I've got 4 or 5 emails from Ken saying, did you see this article, and can you tweet this? And so we're a news gathering and reflecting organization to our Twitter followers and Facebook. And why participate? Also to be cool. And I'm only being partially facetious when I say that. To a certain degree, you need to be there because everyone is there. And if you're not there, you're seen as being remiss, right? So you may get dragged kicking and screaming into Twitter, but there is a large sense in which you really need to be there because everybody else is there, and every other organization that's competing against you for funding or anything else, any other piece of real estate is going to be there. So there is a certain cachet to it, and there's just a certain obligation to be there.
Let me offer a practical tip that comes out of what's happening in this market. So if you're trying to get people who are visiting the area to find you as part of the experience while they're visiting, being on Twitter is one way of getting your news about a new exhibition that's opening, a new performance that's opening. If it's a park, it's a new trail that's available. There are folks in the destination, like the Convention and Visitors Bureau, who have a presence on Twitter. SEE Monterey, SEE Monterey is there. So if you are tweeting about what you are doing, even if you have a small number of followers, one of them is probably going to be the CVB. They will retweet that news because it's in their interest to make this the most dynamic destination they possibly can. And therefore, your word, your information is now going out through a new channel. It's not just hoping to get a calendar listing in the local paper or in the regional papers or in a travel magazine. It's now directly going to the audience, the secondary audience of the followers of the follower who's listening to what you have to say. So even with a minimal amount of information, it's a way of getting your word out to a bigger audience.
And so common question is, what resources are required for Twitter? So it's important to look at the entirety of your social media presence. How much time are you on Tumblr? Are you on Pinterest? Are you on Facebook? how are you going to apportion your energies across all those vehicles? And that's going to be helpful in deciding what resources to devote. Maybe Twitter is the most important vehicle to you. Maybe that's the way to engage the majority of your audience, or maybe it's Facebook. So you have to think about the total mix when you start to devote resources to that. You should, if you embark on this journey into Twitter, be prepared to tweet and respond at least once daily. And even better, the beginning and the end of the day. There's nothing worse than a stagnant social media vehicle. That's a ruse that people will recognize right away. If they see you haven't tweeted for 2 weeks, or you haven't done a Facebook post for 3 weeks, they know you're not engaged. And so my recommendation is, if you can't do it daily, don't do it. Because it really is something that needs to be nurtured and cared for, and because of its role as a customer service channel, you have to be prepared to be fast. You can compartmentalize it. You can allot certain parts of the day to do it, but you do need to do it daily. Weekends are optional. The Monterey Bay Aquarium, we've started doing social media on weekends. It's kind of a new foray for us. But we are seeing there's a lot of statistics that can be returned about social media and engagement, and there's a pretty high level of engagement that occurs on weekends. So right now we're doing at least 1 session a weekend. I have a feeling it's coming like a slow-moving train. We're going to be doing 2 or 3 on the weekends soon. I'm going to give those to Ken. There's an initial investment of time for branding and setting up tools to monitor your presence, and I'll show you a few of those things like TweetDeck, like EchoPhone. There's some things to derive metrics from Twitter, and those take time to set up. Once they're set up, they're a time saver later on, especially TweetDeck. TweetDeck is a great tool. I call it my dashboard. It's my Twitter dashboard, and it's my base of operation. It's my flight deck on the Starship that I'm on every day doing Twitter. Find someone who knows your brand and has a facility with language. So again, you use a lot of conjunctions. You use very informal language. You use a lot of exclamation points. When I was a journalist for many years, I was like this vehement anti-exclamation point person, and I've had to jettison that outlook completely. I use a lot of exclamation points. People want to be friendly. They want to be entertained. One of the ways I think about social media for a lot of people, particularly with the Monterey Bay Aquarium, is it's a vicarious experience. People are going to grab a little snippet of time from their working day, and they're going to come to our Facebook page or our Twitter. They want to be entertained. They want to be transported to our exhibits. They want some entertainment value out of their social media. And so you need to give it to them. If you can't use long sentences, you can't use multisyllabic words all the time. It has to be crisp and pithy and funny. And when you just come out of 3 consecutive back-to-back meetings, to be pithy and funny is a challenge sometimes, but that's the way that conduit works. Being a little nutty doesn't hurt. Being goofy can actually produce big results on Twitter and on Facebook. I mean, the last 2 days, we had a visit from the Travelocity gnome, and that's been a great time. I haven't had to do a lot of creative writing for that. I can just kind of put 4 words up there in a photo of the gnome underwater with a diver or in front of the Jellies exhibit, and I get a lot of mileage out of that. So being a little nutty doesn't hurt. But whoever does it has to cherish your brand and your reputation. They have to take it on the other hand, they have to take it very seriously. Because it has the potential for very wide broadcast. There's famous incidents of people who are responsible for the Twitter account of a major corporation. It was a major bank, I think, this one specific instance, and they had their own Twitter presence. And this particular guy was caught in traffic, and he was pretty pissed. And so he got on Twitter with this profanity-laced thing about the traffic he was in, but it actually went out on the corporate account. So it's not a place where you can mess around and make mistakes. You really need to keep the reputation of your organization in mind. And as I said before, if you can't do it fast, don't do it, because you really need to be in a position to be responsive. I always, when I do my social media, I try to clear a half an hour afterward so that I can go in and monitor responses and respond to the people who have questions. And then I'll check back again later in the day. at least once, maybe twice on that particular post. So TweetDeck makes that easy, and Facebook also has ways to make that easy. So what is a tweet? A tweet is Twitter talk. Tweet is the 140-character piece of content that you put out there, and it comprises a bunch of different things that I'll talk about. Your Twitter handle is the thing that begins with the famous @ sign. So that's all with Twitter, what you see with the @ sign. That's your specific account name. That's your public-facing brand. Ours is Monterey AQ. So we are at Monterey AQ. When you see that in a tweet, you can actually click on it, and our whole page will come up. So that's the Twitter handle. A retweet is when you simply read a tweet that is of interest, and there's a button, and you press retweet. And you are just encapsulating that other individual or organization's tweet and reflecting it back to your users. You can modify that tweet a little bit if it ends up being long, but generally, if the letters RT precede a tweet, that means that you are largely pushing that tweet out without changing it. A reply. So if someone asks you a question on Twitter and you want it to be publicly viewable, your response, you just hit the reply button. It doesn't go directly to your whole audience, but if they were to click on your whole stream of tweets, they could see your response to a certain individual, which is different from a direct message. So there's a direct message button within Twitter. That's like an email. No one else can see that but the individual that you are corresponding with. And the direct message, you can only direct message a person who follows you. You can't direct message just anybody in the Twitter sphere. They have to follow you. You can ask them to follow you, and then you can have a direct message exchange.
They can, as with an email, forward it. So if you reply privately to somebody, they could choose to share that on their public Twitter stream. So you can't assume just because you may be having this conversation with them that it is a private conversation any more than you can assume that an email you send to someone is just going to that person and they're not going to forward it to people whom you didn't intend to have read it.
There's nothing private in social media. I mean, that's the best rule to operate under. Never will be, never can be. So following somebody, so I follow conservation organizations, I follow influential people, bloggers, journalists. It's both a favor to them, a nod of recognition to them, and a potential information source. I'll talk about following versus followers in a minute because that's a ratio that people look at. Followers, that's our 18,000 people who've said yes. They've raised their hand and said, yes, I want to hear from the Monterey Bay Aquarium whenever they tweet. I want their stuff to come into my Twitter page so I can see it because they're an organization I'm interested in. Hashtags like what you see at lower right, those are a way to amalgamate a conversation. They're free. You can use any hashtag you want. So I could say hashtag AmpMedia or something. If there was a particular conversation that I wanted to crystallize for everybody, I can create a hashtag and a word after it. And when you click on that within Twitter, you get every single tweet that has embedded that hashtag phrase. So it's a way of crystallizing a conversation. You can have a Twitter chat, a live chat for an hour that's all centered around a hashtag term. One of the most popular hashtags is what's at lower right there, hashtag FF, which stands for Follow Friday. So there's a funny little Twitter ritual on every Friday. You thank all the people that have done you a favor or supplied you with news. That's called Follow Friday. And I do that religiously. What I do, I have some tools that enable me to find people who have mentioned us, who have the largest Twitter following, and I sort them in descending order. And then on Follow Friday, I thank them all. So that might look like I say, thanks, Ocean Friends, or something, and then I go, hashtag FF, and then I list every one of their Twitter handles. And there might be 10 tweets like that that are just for the purpose of thanking people. So that's kind of a ritual that uses a hashtag. There are lists that you can create with Twitter. These are immensely useful. So I have, for instance, an ocean conservation list. There's just something I'm adding to all the time of people who are authorities in the field. And so that's a list of tweets from Huffington Post, from NOAA, from wherever that I've decided I want to pay attention to every day. You can make those lists private for your own use, or you can make them public and anybody can use that list. And they're very useful. Getting started. Pick a pithy name, something that's recognizable as your brand, hopefully something that's really short. And create an account. It's free. At least that part is free. Set up TweetDeck or another management tool, which I'll show you in a minute. Install a mobile phone. Actually, Ken turned me on to this Echo phone. I mean, there's a lot of third-party suppliers that give you metrics, that give you a dashboard. They all want to hitch their wagon to the Twitter train, and they're free, largely. And Echo Phone is one, and TweetDeck is one. And Echo Phone is just, for me, it's kind of a mobile version of TweetDeck. I have searches set up in there for any mention of us. I have a search set up in there for the words Monterey and aquarium. If those two words exist in one tweet, I want to see that tweet. In that instance, I just leave out the bay because it captures it anyway. I just want to know everything that has the word Monterey and aquarium in it. Create a content calendar. I have a Google Calendar that I use for all my social media, and it enables me to just drag and drop stuff. So if there's one thing that's true about social media, it's that you have to be spontaneous and fluid, but it also helps to have a framework to operate from. And we have so much stuff going on at the aquarium. We have promotions, we have events that are 1 month out, 2 month out, and people are saying, hey, can you put this on social media? You know, we're having a promotion, our hours are changing. Whenever I get that stuff, I put it in the calendar as a placeholder so I don't forget it. So I have this calendar that's just full of stuff, and I'm always moving things around, and as the day gets closer, I'm manipulating more things. But it's good. It's really good to have a content calendar of some kind. Once your presence is established, include share buttons on your web pages or other vehicles that you have. So you're what I call cross-pollinating all your vehicles. So your Facebook supports your Twitter supports your blog, and so on. And then publicize your presence through whatever means. I mean, say, you know, if you have a newsletter, if you have an email, say, hey, we're on Twitter. Come visit us or follow us. I think it's important to develop a content hierarchy, but I like to have a framework in mind for what and why I post. So this is what I call the content hierarchy for the aquarium. The first thing I always want to post, my highest priority, is our original content. So did we just do a blog story about a new species of jelly with some great photos? Well, that is very original content. It has a very real benefit to the aquarium. And that's the kind of content that I'm always going to do first. So that's what I call original content. Then second priority for me is what I call our found content. So as I go out, I look at my Twitter list. Ken sends me ocean conservation news, things like that. I will post that with my own words. So in other words, it's content out there that I have found. It's in a sense original content, but it's reflecting someone else's work. That's priority number 2. Then priority number 3 is retweeting someone else. So that's just hitting the retweet button. I'm using their copy. I'm using their link. I'm just retweeting what they do. I reciprocate freely. I mean, as long as I have time in the morning, if someone tweets, I just had the greatest visit to the Monterey Bay Aquarium with my 9-year-old. I'll say, I'm so glad, click, right? If I have time, I'll always do that and just just reciprocate. And sometimes people get such a kick out of it. Wow, the Monterey Bay Aquarium responded to my tweet, and I have 7 followers, you know. If I have time, I'll do that because it's popular. And it doesn't impede any other content that we're trying to push out. And regarding retweeting, you know, Ken and I have talked about this. It's so easy to play in what I call the echo chamber. I retweet you, you retweet me, they retweet somebody else, we retweet each other. You know, that's a game you can play all day. And so try and be choiceful about what you retweet and why you retweet it. I'm not sure how valuable it is to just play the retweeting game all day. When I first started doing Twitter, I spent all day in the echo chamber. Like retweet, retweet, retweet. Look how much I can retweet.
Twitter, if you think of it, it's kind of like the news crawl at the bottom of a CNN page or a Fox News page. It's going by there, and people aren't going to catch it all. We have 18,000 followers, but nobody is sitting there glued to their screen watching new tweets appear from everyone they're following. But that said, you can create both a vehicle for telling your stories, getting them out there and shared, potentially by the CVB's Twitter feed to their audience. You can also create an identity as a content expert in your chosen field. So I'll pick on Nicole for a second. Center for Photographic Art. A lot of great photographers, a lot of great stories. So Nicole could be using Twitter to say, new exhibition. She could be highlighting a particular photographer and maybe including an embedded shortened web link to their pages or to a magazine article that features their work. If there were news about photographers or photography that was relevant to folks who might not have thought of Center for Photographic Art, and she becomes a source for that information in Twitter, her influence can be way, way outsized compared to the size of the institution, the fact that it's not located in a major metropolitan area. But if you're willing to invest the time, you can become an authority. And so that's a real opportunity for anyone with any organization. Pick the niche that you think you have particular passion for, a potential for expertise for, where you have a natural audience, and put some time into it and watch and see how your influence grows. Because, I mean, there's a gal, I have no idea who she is. Her Twitter handle is @Diane, capital N 56. She's someone somewhere in the world who is a passionate ocean conservation advocate, who tweets relentlessly and has built an enormous audience and is a valuable source of information. I know Jeff follows her, I do too. But she simply carved that out of the love for it. And anyone can do that. Let's say in an area that you're passionate about, that you have some expertise in, if you're willing to kind of scan the universe and see what's going on out there being published to the web or what you can talk about directly.
And the great thing about her is that, you know, I retweet her and thank her so much, and she values us so much that she now embeds our Twitter handle in a lot of her tweets when it's relevant. So we have this reciprocal arrangement with this Diane N56. Frequency, there's no real limit. Unlike Facebook, where I'm very cognizant, I only post generally twice to Facebook unless there's something really important, because I don't want people to, used to be called unfriend, now it's called unlike. I don't want to overstay my welcome, and I don't want to lose likers on Facebook. I don't want to lose followers on Twitter. I mean, but it's much harder to do. I really don't think I might tweet 20 times a day if I have time, following my content hierarchy. So at least twice daily, but there's no real limit. So a lot of people make a big deal about the ratio of following versus followers. So we have a following of 18,000. As the Monterey Bay Aquarium, the institution, I also follow others. And some people think that you are a megalomaniac, you're very egotistical if you have a lot of followers and you don't follow anybody else, right? Because you're not giving them a nod. And so a lot of people make a big deal about that ratio. I do follow a lot of other people. I pretty much do it only on Fridays during the Follow Friday thing, and I pretty much identify the people with the largest followings themselves, and then I thank them. Otherwise, I would go insane because we have 18,000 people, and I'm not going to follow them all. And it's a hollow gesture to me to try and follow them all. You can even set up Twitter so that it auto follows. So every person who follows you, you automatically follow them, and you send them a nice message that says, "Thanks for following us on Twitter," which to me is like as annoying as a pop-up ad in a news site. You know, I mean, that's my personal prejudice. So I do follow, but I do it selectively. Use of lists I talked about a little bit, and I'll show you in a second. Lists can be really important if, to Ken's point, you're trying to be an authority in your field. It's really great to be on a list. Not only set up your Google News profile so that you're pulling in news about photography or ocean conservation or whatever the case may be, but that you're also using lists on Twitter effectively to glean bits of news that'll help establish you as an authority. Use of TweetDeck as a dashboard, I'll show you that. That to me is essential. I almost never, so there's twitter.com/MontereyAQ. That's a website. That's the Twitter website. I almost never go there. I pretty much do everything from TweetDeck, which incorporates my password, my username, all my other information. It even has a brand-specific URL shortener. So if there's a URL that's yay long, one of the things about Twitter is that's going to occupy a lot of your 140 characters, so you want it to be this long. So there's a very popular URL shortener called Bitly. Well, we've actually gone so far as to create a branded Bitly account. So now every big URL that gets shortened, I'll show you this, gets shortened to, it says mbayaq.co. And then there's a couple of letters. So it's very short, but it actually contains information about our brand.
And to give you another example of that, the New York Times does something similar. If you are reading a New York Times story that came to you through Twitter, it'll be the web URL will begin NYT. They've created that one automatically.
Cue for us doing it because it's very effective. So use of URL shorteners, leaving room for retweets. So if you retweet somebody and you see it come up and it's 139 characters and you go, great, I made it, 139 characters, I'm in under the limit. If someone tries to retweet that, they're going to go over, right? Because they're appending their Twitter handle onto that. So do all your people a favor and keep your tweets, no matter what they are, down to, let's say, 130, so that when they retweet, you give them an opportunity to retweet without having to manipulate the content, right? Does that make sense? So you want to leave room for retweets. If you start a tweet with @, that's the way a reply works. It only is visible in that person's stream unless they specifically go to your Twitter website. They can see it. It's public, but it doesn't get broadcast to your whole audience. So that's a common misconception. Sometimes you'll see people they'll put a period, and then they'll put @whatever the person's Twitter handle is. That way it goes out to everybody. But the fact is, if you start with the @ you're not broadcasting to your whole organization. So just be aware of that. Twitter search, if you don't use TweetDeck, twitter.com/search, you can search for anything. You can search for Arts Council, the words Arts Council. You can, whatever you want. You can come up with more tweets than you'll know what to do with. So that's a nice thing to have access to. I talked a little about cross-pollinating across channels. Posting images. If you want to just put a link, if you have a great image you want to show somebody and you want it to pop up, there's a thing that's actually incorporated into TweetDeck. It's called YFrog. Kind of a silly name, but you can just upload a photo and YFrog gives it a URL. And so when you tweet and they click on that link, the photo pops up. It's kind of neat. YFrog.com. But if you go to if you use TweetDeck, it's folded into the TweetDeck service. So there's a button that says, want to upload a photo. At the Monterey Bay Aquarium, most of our greatest photos are on our blog. So I don't have much need for that because I link people to our blog, and I'm trying to grow the list of people who follow us on our Tumblr blog anyway. So I don't use that a whole lot. That's our page. That's our twitter.com page live.
What shows up there is just what you've sent?
So we have, I'm tethered here. Those are tweets that we have sent on the right. That is your page won't look like that unless you invest some graphic resources in it. This is a branded Twitter page. We've taken the time to put that ocean background on it. We've put what we call the bug, the kelp logo at the upper left. We've put our statement about who we are up there. So this is a branded Twitter page that we create. This is the official Twitter page, twitter.com. And we link a lot of people to that.
It's not that hard, truly, to do this. My personal Twitter page, I put a photo up as background wallpaper. I think it's got my picture up instead of the logo, and I think I was able to say something basic about myself, and it'll actually walk you through the process of doing that to customize your page.
And there's a little summary at upper right. So we've tweeted 4,963 times. And we have 18,221 followers at this moment. So this is live. So that's Twitter page. But as I mentioned, I never use it. I use this scary-looking thing. And it doesn't render particularly well in this light. But this is TweetDeck. And each one of these columns has a specific purpose in the world. TweetDeck is also free. You have to spend a little time to set it up. You put your password in, and you put your account name in. We put our Bitly information in there. We've got a lot of stuff kind of behind the scenes here. But TweetDeck, if I just walk you across these columns, on the left is every tweet. This is live, so you might see this populated as we sit here looking at it. But on the left is every tweet that has our Twitter handle in it, @MontereyAQ. And Ken, you can probably point to the top one where there's MontereyAQ. No, to the right, just where the actual handle is. Right there, right there. So this is the roaming gnome. The penguins are @Monterey Aquarium. There's a hashtag for the Travelocity roaming gnome so that anybody that clicks on the hashtag can find out every tweet in the Twitter sphere pertaining to the Travelocity gnome. And then there's a TwitPic, which is like YFrog. It's a way, and we'll just go over here and we'll click on this. We'll see what happens. So somebody found the Travelocity gnome. There he is. He's in the penguin exhibit. So typical goofy tweet. But this is what you see. So this first column is every mention in real time of our Twitter handle. This column, yeah.
I was going to say, so in terms of how does this word get out? I mean, who is this reaching? If it was something Jeff tweeted originally, it's going to the 18,221 people. But this was from C Monterey. So the chamber, the CVB's Twitter account retweeted that. It was picked up by somebody named the Carmel Chamber, retweeted that. So it's propagating in the community, and any of the eyeballs that are following those accounts now have the potential to be the ones who they first saw it through one of their feeds rather than through the aquarium's feed or rather than through the roaming gnomes Twitter account. It just, you never know exactly, it's like with advertising, you never know quite where your message is getting out. But the fact that it's there and others have the possibility of sharing that means that your reach is a lot bigger.
Let me give you the lay of the land a little bit here. So these buttons up here are the accounts that I have access through TweetDeck. And I actually have all our Facebook accounts embedded in there because from TweetDeck, you can also post to Facebook. I don't like it because it doesn't pull in an image. And we've learned on Facebook that if we don't have an image accompanying our Facebook post, it falls completely flat.
What Jeff has found with the aquarium's Facebook account, if we just write something, what a beautiful day, what a beautiful sunrise off our back deck, very little reaction from our audience to that Facebook posting. What a beautiful morning off the back decks of the Monterey Bay Aquarium, picture of the sunrise over Monterey Bay, now people will react. Because we are visual and we're discovering that there's much more reaction to visual content. So if you're posting about a new photo exhibition or a new art exhibit or a dance performance or whatever it may be, a photo of the dancers, a picture of a photo, a picture of the work of art or a sculpture is going to get you more traction, whether you put it on Twitter or you put it on Facebook.
I mean, imagine if your own Facebook page, if you look at your news feed, you're going to notice a great photo and you're going to click on it. And if it comes across and it's just copy, particularly if you only check it once a day, before dinner or something, you're just going to scan all those Facebook posts. You're not going to pick up the one that doesn't have an image. And I always think it's a vicarious experience. But I can post to Facebook and Twitter simultaneously just by clicking these buttons. So this says now I'm going to post from Twitter, from our Facebook page. If I click this, it's from our PR account, which is Ken's Twitter account. And if I click this button, I'm also going to post that same tweet out to our Seafood Watch sustainable seafood content. So I can do one tweet and post it across all these platforms simultaneously. I rarely do it. I pretty much just stick to the Monterey Bay Aquarium's Twitter account. This is the content area. So is Amp Media TV the Twitter handle here? Yeah? So I'm going to tweet. So this is the content area. So great to present a Twitter, I can't see, Twitter talk today at @ amp Media TV. So great to present a Twitter talk today at Amp Media TV. And of course, I need to add an exclamation point. And I just hit return. And I just tweeted. And if I click on my handle right here, Monterey AC, I'll get a column will pop up that has all my recent tweets. And there you see it. We just tweeted. This second column is every mention of the words Monterey and aquarium. And I've actually even fine-tuned that a little bit to eliminate certain tweets. People tweet a lot about physical aquariums that they're selling on their desk in Monterey. And I put in a few things to cull those out. This is mentions of Seafood Watch. The third column, the Twitter handle. The fourth column is mentions of the word Seafood Watch. The fifth column is what I call my oceans list. That is all the people, Huffington Post, Passion Fish Restaurant here in Monterey, Diane N56. These are my trustworthy folks where I glean great stories that I might want to retweet or push out. So that's that one. This column here is direct messages. In other words, that's that private conduit I talked about. Other people can't see those, but it's somebody who followed me and is sending me a message. I don't get a lot of traffic through there, but I do get some. Let's see what other columns I've set up here. Direct messages to Seafood Watch. So I've got maybe 12. This is mentions of Monterey Aquarium PR. That's Ken's PR account. There's mentions of Ken's personal account. So it's just a search I set up for @AquaKen. That's Ken. Then there's a scheduler in here, which I wanted to talk about. Then these other ones are mentions of a book I just wrote, which are empty, unfortunately.
And your life is not going to be this complicated, needless to say,
Yeah.
but you'll probably want to set up some searches on topics you're interested in, or mentions of you, or mentions of things that are particularly relevant to your work.
Don't get scared by TweetDeck. Start with one column. Get going. Then you'll say, hey, I wondered, shouldn't I follow all instances of the words Arts Council Monterey? Great idea. I'm going to create a column for that. Look at that for a week. Don't be frightened by this big dashboard, but it's hugely useful. But I want to mention one other important thing. When I say I don't put a limit on the number of things I tweet, nor do I tweet 20 times in succession in 5 minutes. A lot of people do that. And I don't like that coming into my stream personally. So even if I found 20 things that I want to tweet, TweetDeck has a great scheduler. You just hit this big icon with a clock on it, and you say, send this tweet in an hour. Send this tweet in 2 hours. Send this tweet 2 weeks from Thursday at 10 a.m. So you can, even during the course of the day, you can spread out a whole bunch of tweets so you're not hitting people with this deluge. And I think that I use that feature constantly. And on the weekend posts, to save myself time on a weekend, I'll schedule them for Saturday and Sunday so that they'll come up.
So to kind of wrap up here and bring it back from the stratosphere down to real world where you're living, you don't have a web team necessarily or a full PR department of several folks. How can you make this work for you in a way that's going to advance your core mission, bring in more supporters, bring in more visitors? Set up the account to start with. I mean, that's a beginning. You can passively just observe for a while. Do some searches on topics that are relevant to you and what you're trying to accomplish, and find out who's already out there providing really good content that resonates with you and is going to resonate with your audience. Follow them so you can see them on a consistent basis. Start posting things that are maybe the simple, we've got a new exhibition opening, we've got a new performance coming, we're looking for volunteers to help out. Realizing that you're talking to a pretty small audience in the beginning. And if you choose to become a content authority, start looking for things. I mean, the way you do maybe with Facebook, you're passionate about politics, or you really are big into gardening, or you're an avid hiker and you're sharing that information. Think of your organization as potentially becoming the expert, the world expert on some topic, and using the Twitter account as a vehicle to do that. If you are developing that expertise or creating relevant content for the destination, you're going to be followed by other people who have the same interests, who've discovered you there, and you never know where it's going to wind up.